You've got that deer in headlights look, so I think it's time for me to roll with the intro.
That's just how I always look these
That's
days.
just, that's fine. What's going on, everyone? It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce an old friend of mine, Leslie. Uh, Leslie and I have worked together on multiple occasions, um, and and despite Leslie's best efforts, and she is a particularly interesting person for you to hear from, I think, because although she has the chops of a classical tech IC, so you have like a programming background and all kinds of stuff. Um, I think the way I've worked with you the most is as a project manager and as a technical program manager, and that type of stuff where you're like sort of halfway in the business world and halfway still in the tech world. Um, you're also, and I don't just say this because we're recording, you're also the best TPM or PM I've ever worked with. And it's just, I just, whenever I was on a team that you were helping to run, it felt like you were like the manager could not have survived without you. And you were a big reason why shit got done. So uh, I think it
You're
would be
just saying
very,
that because you want me to send you cookies, aren't you?
yeah, you're going to send me cookies anyway. It's going to be fine.
It's true.
Usually I just talk shit to you and you still send me cookies. So I don't know.
It's true. I don't know what's wrong with me.
um, anyway, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
We've been meaning to do this for ever.
Couple years, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna just kick it off with like, can you just give everyone a quick overview of kind of what you do, what exactly that is? My knowledge of TPMing stops pretty much after the acronym, so it's just I know that to sound smart enough, and then I stop talking.
Uh, Technical program management it's its own beast. I always refer to it as cat herding of engineers and stakeholders because it's totally what it is, regardless of the size of the company. So I've done small and, you know, 1,500 plus people in a company. Um, it's wrangling all the right people to get in line and work on the right stuff on the right timeline and just kind of hold everybody accountable. Like that's the simplest way to put it. I'm just organizing the chaos so that other people don't have to and they can work like focus on doing the actual work, which is what you do. So I would just sit there and tap you virtually on the shoulder and be like, hey Dave, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And then you would tell me, no, I'm not done yet. And then I'd be like, well, finish. But but it's chasing everybody and making sure that everything is going according to plan. And the thing I think you've heard me say this, I say this at every job. My I see my job as automating myself out of the job. So as long as the team can run, like I can take a 2 week vacation and they don't go off the rails because I'm gone, then things are going smoothly. And that means I'm freed up to do something else and like help another team. So I kind of position myself so that I can move around within teams in a company and not be siloed to a single group because the siloing is where all the project like the project downfalls will happen if only one group knows what's going on with one single lead. So I just kind of make sure I can hop around and help anybody in any circumstance. Like I've done so many different industries, like it doesn't matter what the industry is. It's all the same kind of work. You just have to speak a different language.
Yeah, I think that's, I guess, one of the reasons you're that I've always been like, oh, things run so well when Leslie's around. It's probably because you have that attitude. I didn't know that's how you thought about it, but this kind of
Mm.
automating yourself out of a thing by kind of putting in place the systems and processes that we're missing without being too heavy, without them getting in the way. Um,
Yeah, because I
um,
hate process for the sake of
yeah,
process. That's like my nemesis. I hate it.
yeah, that's
And
why
so
I liked you. As
you
soon as
all
I
do
met you,
too.
I was like, well, she's not just doing this so that she can show that she's done a bunch of stuff. It's like she's doing things to solve actual problems.
Yep.
That's your tech background talking, I think. That's your like your training.
Yeah, my 2 years of engineering where I was like, wow, I really hate this. I'm going to do something else.
You know, Thankfully for my viewers, 2 years of engineering now makes you a distinguished senior engineer in a lot of places. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think you can get very good in two
No,
years. but it ain't.
Not 2 years in 2003.
Yeah.
That's not relevant anymore.
Yeah, I think regardless of when, like engineering experience, if you're the type of person that learns from your experiences, is pretty transferable, even if you fill in
Yeah.
new keywords and technologies. It's like it's that instinct, the instinct in 2000
Yeah.
to let's not rewrite this because someone new joined the team who wants to rewrite it,
Mhm.
but rather keep a working thing working and improve it. Like that's usually an instinct from experience that it's still just as valid today as it was 20 years ago. That's the
I
important.
mean, that's kind of how I got into this was because nobody knew what to do with themselves. And I just kind of like made up technical program management. Like it wasn't a thing
Yeah.
then. And
Yeah.
that also wasn't the title. And so I just kind of like put myself in there and was like, hi, I'm going to solve all your problems. And then people believed me.
Suckers.
Hey, suckers. And like
Yeah.
15 years later, they still believe me. It's amazing.
But it's true. It's like the titles and stuff have caught up, I think, more to the reality of actually developing software. Where it's like you're saying, 10 years ago, it's like you're lucky if a project management position existed, which was like the requirement was like, oh, by the way, you really need to know how software gets written and the software development life cycle and stuff. And now there's names for that stuff. There's like curricula. There's a more standardized set of stuff that you're looking for in a candidate.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is really deceiving about the title technical program management. People assume that means like you are an engineer and you're just an engineer that does project management sort of stuff. Like that's technical program management just means you're a program manager that works in tech. That's all that means. So when I see job listings that say stuff like required 10 years engineering experience, like, oh no, that's not what this means. You all are very, it's
Yeah, it's
ill-conceived.
probably a place that's looking for a senior engineer, like a principal engineer who loves doing project management, which
Yep.
good luck. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely I think organizations that run up into that limit of what they can do with a small team, and they try to do that before they realize like, oh, we have to become more like a big corp and like actually have
Yeah.
a TPM role that does just that and isn't also just like
Yeah.
slinging code on the weekends.
Yeah. The wearing multiple hats is always a red flag in those job descriptions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but on the other hand, I think that's one of the things you've been good at in like when we worked at a smaller company, you
Mhm.
kind of, I feel like, at least from my perspective, brought in some of that process and stuff that they needed in a non-threatening
Yeah.
way, where it's not like everything's going to go through some change management system now, but rather like, hey, you have this problem that can be solved with like a better process or splitting up the team better.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas like in that
Yeah.
chaos of a small company that's growing, there's also a lot of opportunity for you to do some pretty heavy lifts with your skills.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like a little by chance and a lot by design. I find myself the first TPM at most companies I go to. So I get to write the charter and figure out the process and figure out what makes sense for that company and that team or teams. Um, because it's not one size fits all. And I think that's where people go wrong is that they have like a checklist of all the stuff they think they should do. And they just want to go down and check each of those boxes for their boss. Like that's not how this works. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And I think that's the part that people take for granted sometimes. There's a big people aspect to this job. And despite the fact I am not a terribly big people person, I do feel like I'm pretty good at identifying like where people's strengths are, where their challenges are, the stuff that they excel in, the stuff I know I should get somebody else for, and all that, like who overestimates, who underestimates on projects, all that kind of stuff. So it's that is a the people human element of engineering is real. And I feel like we're starting to figure that out, but I don't know if we're figuring that out in the right way. So I try to help with that too, because as long as a stakeholder sees me as like a trusted source that can help with that sort of stuff, I feel like I can identify those little black holes that they don't know about because they're just looking at what the output is and not maybe the human behind it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's actually interesting. Although, underestimates projects. Leslie, that's such a hurtful way to express it. I prefer to think of it as temporal optimism. um,
that that's the thing though. Like worked with you at enough
Yeah.
positions and enough different companies.
I'm like, everything's
I
possible.
know,
Yeah, just give it to me. I'll get it done.
I know you'll say yes.
And you're
Oh,
like, Dave,
where'd
this
my
is not
video
like,
go?
you don't take this home on the weekend and do it. It's like you have to do this during work hours. There has to be like a deadline.
Mhm. Yeah, like by the way, when you say that this is going to get done on this day, I'm going to pad the crap out of it because I
Well,
know how you are.
you know all about Einstein's theory of relativity, don't you? Time really is a more mushy construct than many of us like to admit,
Mm,
Leslie. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's
sure.
not my problem. You know, that's
I'll just go explain that to the VPs and
yeah,
CEOs of
yeah.
companies.
VPs tend to be real
Time isn't a
flexible with
construct.
that. Yeah, they get real philosophical, those VPs up there. That's
I'll let you know how that goes at my next company.
sounds good. Sounds good. Uh, yeah, interesting. So that's actually a decent segue for what can people like me do to help people like you when we're all working together? Because I think that's something that I probably didn't ask myself until it was too late. I sort of saw what you were doing and thought it was kind of more abstract and separate from what I was doing than it probably was. Like, so
Mm.
yeah, what can we do to help our TPMs?
Honestly, uh, communicating just in general, like being a responsive human, um, and being honest. Like if you say we're running an agile sprints or something, it's a 2-week sprint, we're halfway through it, and you're like, oh, I'm really behind. Just tell me that. Like, I'm not going to yell at you. That's not my job. I'm not your boss. Like, I'm just here to
Oh,
get the
you do
trains
that for
moving.
free.
Yeah, I do that. That is a bonus that you get. Thank you very much. You're welcome. It's free of charge. Um, but I just the honesty, like I'm behind and now I know I'm only going to finish 3/4 of this work and the rest of it's going to spill over. Like that helps me plan for the upcoming sprint because then I know, okay, we're going to have a little bit of carryover from Dave and then we shouldn't pile him on with the same amount of work we'd planned originally because he's going to have a little catch up to do on this. Like anything that you can communicate to me that's going to help me plan ahead is huge. I mean, just telling me like, by the way, I booked a 2-week vacation 6 months from now. Like, awesome. I like throw that into the plan because that is, you might not see it as a big deal, but that has a big impact on the roadmap that I'm working with the engineering managers and stuff on. So just the communication, like, just don't ignore me
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
send me updates if I ask for them. Like, that's really it.
I think many people, like in my position, where they're an individual contributor on a team, are we you just because of how the hierarchy is, and like we know you're working with our manager and the people above our manager, it can
Mhm.
have this feeling, I think, especially for junior folks who kind of don't know how it works yet, that it's like, oh, Leslie's like the teacher, and it's like a problem if something is late, like there's deadlines.
Mhm.
Um, and so like I better just like hope for the best or crunch in the last part of the sprint or whatever. And it's like it's not about that. You know, you're not like grading engineers on whether like schedules change, things are harder. It's not like your fault. And I think a lot of junior people feel like it's their fault. Like, well, they know that they're relatively junior. They're like, I got to get this done. If I wasn't a dumbass, I would get this done. They put all this pressure on themselves, and then it's of course still late because they needed help and they didn't ask for it. So,
Yeah, yeah, asking, that's a big thing. Just asking for help when you need it, whether it's from me or just like raising a flag to me to say like I need help and I don't know who I need it from.
yeah,
I have a question. I don't, just it's just the communication is so huge. And honestly, another part of that too is like say it's a team that uses Jira, like you have tickets in Jira. Putting updates in those tickets so I don't have to come ask you what's going on. Like even if it's just one said you're laughing because this is important to me, just throwing something in there and being like, hey, I worked on this and I'm blocked by this thing over here, can't pick that up until 3 weeks from now. Like then I can just cruise through, look at stuff, and I can piece the puzzles together. Piece the puzzles. Put the pieces of the puzzle together myself instead of having to find time to talk to you and figure out what's going on. Because a lot of the time, I mean, we're working remotely and asynchronously. I've got people in Australia. Like I'm never going to have live time with them. So if I can just look in a Jira ticket, look at comments, I have all the information I need, and then I'm not delayed by another full day because that person's already signed off for the day.
I love that the general lesson of this that I'm hearing, and kind of seeing from my own experience is that it's like almost easier to do it right than it is to do it wrong. But it's just like we come in with like all the wrong notions about how this works, so that we don't communicate. Like we're scared to say we're going to be late on something, et cetera, et cetera. And
Well,
that just
that's why I
ends up
try to
being hard.
spend time with, I mean, everybody in like a new company or a new team or something, but especially with junior people, I try to make like just sit down one-on-one with them and explain what my role is and like what my expectations are and that kind of thing, so that they don't think that I'm the teacher grading them. Like, yeah, your boss is probably going to come to me for feedback when it comes down to review time, but like I'm not looking at your code. I mean, that's not the thing I'm involved with. If I can say like they're very communicative and friendly, then like that's all the manager wants to hear from me. So I'm not the teacher.
You bring up an amazing point, which is that um, the reason I ask, like, how can we help you is also selfish, because it's like you can, I think you can make yourself look very good to management in a way by just working well, because your TPM works directly with your manager and is probably also involved in talking to your manager's manager. And if your name comes up as someone who's reliable, honest, like has integrity, gets shit done, that's like you're helping yourself in a way that you can't just by like pushing hard on projects or like silently getting your stuff done every sprint. It's like there's an
Yeah.
opportunity for you to be just recognized more, like but you just
Mhm.
become more visible if you're good at this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's not like political maneuvering or anything. It's just like you're
No.
actually talking to your team. It's
Yeah, and when you get the reputation, like when if your boss,
sorry,
that's
bagel
good.
emergency.
Bagel. Um, like if your boss is coming to me for feedback and like, how are things going, sort of thing. Because sometimes that's the entire check-in is just like, how are things going with the team? Like no specifics, just like tell me if something's going wrong. If my update is always that, this person over here, like they're always behind when I check things on Friday. And then on Monday morning, all of a sudden, all of this stuff has been done that I know you spent the entire weekend working, which I mean, if it's like a flex thing and that's what you've agreed to do, kind of like that's a different situation. But if you're like 9 to 5 sort of thing, and then I see you've worked the entire weekend because you spent the entire week not doing the work you were supposed to do, I'm going to bring it up. And then if you get the reputation of being that person that always works the weekends, but during the week is unreliable, that's not great. Like that doesn't make it look like you get bonus points for working the weekend. It means you couldn't finish your work in the allotted amount of time. And that's a bummer because it's like, I appreciate that you put in the extra work, but did you? Or did you just do it at
Yeah,
the wrong time?
yeah, right. I mean it's a communication thing too. It's like
Yeah.
at companies we've worked at, it's like if someone frequently takes off Tuesday because they got to do stuff for their kids or whatever, and then they work some on the weekends, it's like not a warning sign. But
No,
yeah, there's other. I mean, it's about communication. That sounds so trite and overused. I'm sorry,
no, it's
but
true.
it really is. It's just like just talk to
Yeah.
people about what you're doing and when, and don't try to like play some game of like, well, I'll do my work here and then I'll bullshit like management and
Yeah.
the ticketing system separately just to like so they
Yep.
it's like you're just making it so much harder on yourself.
Well,
um
you're making it harder for yourself, but then also for
and
me
for
because and
everyone
I'm
else.
going to end up digging in and I'm going to be like, hey, look at the timestamp. It's 1:30 in the
Yeah,
morning on a Sunday. Like I can see all of that, man. Like just tell me what's going on.
Leslie, I thought we weren't going to have this talk during the interview. Listen,
Yeah, sorry to do this
trying.
so publicly, but I need to get my notebook out and I've got some notes for you.
Yeah, I've seen a pattern over the last several months. So no, that's cool. So I just want to re-emphasize that like one of the big lessons here is um, yes, communicate, but also your TPM and just working well with them can really help you in terms of getting promotions, in terms of your manager knowing what to write in your like promotion packet. It's like when you're doing a review that involves your team, your TPM, your manager, like everybody gets to chime in. So like
Yeah.
it's just extra leverage that you can use to like make your good work at the company known.
Yeah. And
Um,
honestly, like even if you're not good at your job, if you're nice to me, like that goes a really long way because it means you're trying and you're friendly and there's room to work with versus the people that see me as like the contrary evil enemy to their workday. It's like, if you're difficult for me to work with, that makes everything harder. And I'm not gonna be the nicest person. So like, just be nice in general. Everyone in every role, everywhere. Just be nice. Just be nice.
Just be nice.
Just be nice.
Signed, Leslie. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt with like a little suspicious winky face, like
Which feels like a really weird thing to come out of the mouth of the person that has like a Deadpool shrine over here.
That's true. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that Deadpool shrine later. Stay
Okay.
tuned. That part's only going to be in the podcast version of this, the audio only version. So you kind of alluded to this. You're who are the people that you're accountable to in a company, and what are their motivations? The reason I ask is because I think through your perspective, people like me can get a very interesting insight into kind of the more business aspect of what our managers and like VPs and stuff are trying to get done, and what actually matters to them. Because I think having a misconception about that, it's like I probably still run around with a lot of misconceptions about it, and learning more about what, I mean, realistically, the most powerful people at your company, like in your department, are trying to do, like, the more you can understand that, at least, even if you're not always working directly in sync with that, because you think like tech debt has to be addressed or whatever your team decides, like, you can at least understand how to communicate what the value that you're doing is in relation to their goals. So who are those people that are kind of above you that you're accountable to, and what's going on in their minds from your perspective?
Um, the people I'm accountable to are, that varies based on my role within a particular team. So for example, if there is a project that has, 4 different teams worth of engineering managers, and they roll up to a VP of engineering. So I'm accountable to all those folks. If there's a marketing aspect, whoever my contact is for marketing, I'm accountable to that person. If we've got legal, if we have security, whatever, like whoever the stakeholders are for each department that's involved, that's who I'm accountable to. But it also goes the other way. I'm also accountable to all of you, because if I'm not raising red flags when I see them, or if I'm not helping you unblock situations that you've got going on, if I'm not helping answer questions, like, then I'm failing you too. It's not a one-way thing. So I'm accountable to everyone. It's just a matter of what those people are looking for, which is the other part of your question. So the higher, like, general rule of thumb, the higher up the person's title is, the less information they want from me. And they just want to know, is it on track? Great. Like that's all they want to know at the very top. And then as you come down, there's like a little bit more detail folks want. But the other thing that I do is, because that's not a hard and fast rule, is I make sure that I understand the level of detail and information that each individual human wants to hear from me. Because I've had VPs of engineering who in theory should just want to know, is it on track or no? And they actually want a ton of detail, because they're the same way I am. They don't want to have to come to me to ask follow-up questions. So they just want me to dump all the information to them so that they have everything they need should anybody ask a question, and they don't have to reach out for it. So it totally depends on those people and what kind of information they want. But like, general rule of thumb, the higher up they are, the less info they need, and they just want to know if it's on track. Like, are you going to meet the deadline you said you were in the budget? Great. The engineering managers and product managers tend to want the most detail. They want to know, like, how many specific tickets have we gotten done, and like, how many hours have we spent on it, and how is this taking away time and resources from this project over here that we want to get started. Like, it's the lower down the totem pole, the more information they need. And it ends with me, where I should, in theory, have all of the information and be able to answer anybody's question that comes to me, aside from a specific code question.
Oh,
but
perfect.
that's why I always ask for like as much detail as possible, because I don't want to ask the same question twice, because I just hate doing that. And I don't want to be reliant on people I may or may not be able to get a hold of in that moment to answer a question that I might have for a stakeholder.
It's a great, I would love if that like sunk into my head 10 years earlier. That would have helped me a lot, because it's like, what I didn't understand is exactly what you're saying, is that you are literally an abstraction layer for me so that I don't have to answer 700 questions a day to every layer of management above me about where something is in the level of detail that they want. It's like that knowledge lives in your head at just the level above actual code being written. And that actually saves me more time than I even realize I could be losing on this kind of thing.
That's also why I make sure, I mean, just from having worked with me, but I always have dashboards and documentation of like everything that could potentially be in my head has to be in writing somewhere, because something happens to me tomorrow, everybody needs to be able to know where to find that information. So even if that VP of engineering isn't going to routinely look at this dashboard, they have the ability to, should they ever need to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Information for all.
It's a good habit from the tech stuff, documentation. What does, so I'm going to shift gears now for people that are interested in kind of like doing what you do and not just working with people that are doing what you do. What does a career path kind of look like for you, and how would you like advise someone new to get into it? Because it does straddle several skill sets.
Well, seeing as I'm the person that just made it up and then it turned into an industry, I'm gonna have kind of a hard time answering that. But I have mentored a few people who had never done this kind of work before, and they worked their way into it. Actually, all three of them were very different. One of them didn't do anything with tech whatsoever. She worked with nonprofits, like inner city nonprofits, various different industries. And she thought what I did was interesting, and she knew that like tech, there would be a little more money, a lot more money. And for her, it was really getting her foot in the door for interviews by emphasizing in her cover letter and her resume that all of her skills are transferable. And I say that on mine too, just speaking about different industries. Like, it doesn't matter what you put me in, I can do whatever. It's all the same skill set. Um, and so she had a hard time for a while, but when she got in front of the right people, it was very clear that this was not a job that was going to be difficult for her to do. You just have to learn the language of that company. And, just like anything else, you settle into a groove with them and you learn the way that company works and that team and all that. It's all the same stuff. And the other people, it's like one did like office administration, project management sort of stuff. But it was one of those, like, they were the office admin and they just kind of picked things up here and there because they had to, because it was a small company. And then eventually her skill set was recognized as, oh, this is actually really valuable. And you've been here for a few years and you know all the engineers, and like, we need another person. So why don't you try it out? And another person was a QA engineer. And she just wanted to, it was kind of like the way I started. Like, she was good at it and she liked it, but she's like, I kind of want to do something different and get out of the code and be a little bit higher up. But for her, it was like she had been doing that for, I think, 9 or 10 years, specifically QA engineering. And she just wanted something different. And because she was established at that company and she knew all the people, and it's the connections and the communication. Like, it's a lot. I guess that goes for anything. If you know people, everything is easier. But that first person I spoke of, she didn't know anybody. And I was trying to get her in front of people, and it's harder to get in the door. But if you can emphasize that your skill set is transferable, or that you're quick to learn things or whatever, I think people are more willing to take a chance on you in a role like this, versus if you're an engineer and you've never done engineering before, they're like, okay, well, I'm sure you could, but do you have any training? Like this, you can have training, PMP training. I never did. And I've been doing this my entire professional career. So it's not a requirement. Even if they say it's a requirement in a job rec, it's not.
It's really
It's
held you
just
back,
not.
is what you're saying. Not being
Clearly.
PMP certified.
Yeah. No, I never did, because I'm already doing the
You're
job.
already working, yeah. You're not going to re-interview at your company for
Nope.
more money because of a PMP cert.
Nope.
Is it, if someone has no experience and is trying to get a leg up during interviews, is getting a PMP cert something that could signal that they have? Do you think it would be worth the time and effort? It's a pretty thick
It
study guide, if I've
Yeah, it can definitely be like you're showing the initiative, first of all, which is a huge thing. And you do have to have initiative in this position. Like you can't be reactive, you have to be a proactive person. So that's signaling the intent, which is huge. Um, but it's it's really less about like physical diplomas and that kind of thing that you have, and more just proving you can do it. And I think that's why it took so long for this to become like a real thing that people are looking for and actually trying to hire into, because they didn't know what they needed. And
It's
that's
like
why I go
DevOps.
in
It's the same
places
thing.
and
There were a bunch of us
yep.
doing DevOps before people
Mhm.
had a name for like, well, we need someone who really understands like programming and can sling code, but also someone that knows infrastructure and also someone that knows how to work together in a big mixed team and get stuff done.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It's another name for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like it's weird to me that we're in 2021 and we're still figuring out what we need in tech. Like we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot
And we're
of
still
wrong
figuring
ways
that
to
out.
do things, and they seem very natural. I think that's one of those things. It's like tech is just littered with pitfalls where it feels very right to do a wrong thing at a company, and then
Yeah.
that just becomes the way you do it, and you just always have these problems. And I think things like DevOps being more like codified is a way of like teaching people like, hey, there's a different way to structure this that makes all
Mhm.
of the problems you have go away. And yeah, you get some new problems, but like those maybe you would prefer those problems. Um,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
interesting. If so, again, just for like people that are interested in following your path now, what would you like? What are the main skill sets? Like, if you had to kind of generalize for that stuff you're doing and using every day, like, what are the main skill sets that people should learn? Is it like
Um,
here? I'll give you a wrong answer because that's what I have in my head, and then you can just correct me. Maybe we'll
okay.
get there. Uh, so like I imagine it's like some blend of like you got to know how software gets developed and the software development life cycle and how like just an overview of how agile like teams kind of work in general. It's different at every company, but
Yeah.
and then like business stuff. You can tell where my focus has been over the years. Business stuff. You got some business stuff there, and then you kind of mix in kind of like the project management aspect where it's like maybe you're familiar with a tool like Asana or the Atlassian stuff,
Hmm.
um, and then you just have a mind for details and for keeping track of a lot of different things at the same. I don't know. Start correcting
I
me.
mean, you're not doing terrible. You're really not. It is like I mentioned, you need to be a proactive person. You do need to be an organized person. Like that's you have to be. You just have to be. You can't be scatterbrained, because it'll backfire like a million ways. Um, is if you're somebody that can only focus on one thing at a time, that's probably not going to go very well. And that's not to say you have to be a multitasker, because that's a very loaded term and like I won't even get into that, but you do have to be able to get pulled into different directions sometimes and be able to realign yourself on what your priority is. um
Yeah, if context switching hurts you, this may not be for you. Like,
yes, yeah, this will not be for you, period. I mean, you have to be able to communicate well. You have to. I cannot emphasize enough how much you need to be able to communicate well. And that doesn't, I don't necessarily mean like if your company is like primarily English speaking and that's your second language, like that's not what I mean. I mean, your intent needs to be there and you need to have the ability to have a back and forth with another person and understand each other. It doesn't matter what the language is. Like I've had plenty of experience with that. You can still do it. You can still communicate. Like your company could be in Germany and you're in America. As long as you can figure out how to have a solid communication style, you're golden. Um, Liking documentation is a good thing, and being able to write it is even better. But I don't see that as a requirement. It's just really helpful because when you're having like a meeting and say a bunch of engineers are talking, if you can kind of jot down notes and fill in the gaps yourself, that's just a time saver. But I don't think most places don't see that as a requirement. It's just kind of like a nice bonus. Um, Understanding agile is big. There's like agile with a capital A and then a small a, which is a whole thing. But every place is different with the way they run it. But having the general understanding of the agile process so that you can acclimate and accommodate your teams to whatever is going to work best for them, that's huge. Like actual tools, like you mentioned, Atlassian, Asana, it's all transferable. Like it's not that hard to learn any of them. So if you don't know any of them, you could just start messing around with them, and like within a week you'll be a pro. Like it's not that bad. But Trello, I live and die by the app Todoist, because that's how I keep myself organized. I don't use that for my teams, but that's how I keep my priorities straight. So if I can integrate that with other things, if you understand API integrations, that's always helpful. Like the communication and the organization, to me, those are really the only things you have to have. Everything else can be learned. Like agile process, you can learn it. The business side of how things work, the software development cycle, you can learn all of that.
Excuse me, it's
But if you
called
have to,
business stuff. Business stuff.
the business stuff, excuse me, the
You gotta
business
put air
things,
quotes too. Yeah.
business stuff, it is. It's just, it's all of that can be learned. It's just you don't want to be in this role if you have to fight your instincts all day, every day. If you're a scattered person and you have to fight that all day, you're going to be exhausted, and it's not going to be fun for you, and you're just going to resent it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, that actually leads really well into what does a kind of, now I know this is going to be hugely variable for you because like you've also been in a lot of different positions where like when I joined HashiCorp, you were working with Mitchell to do stuff. And then,
Yeah.
it's like when I left, you were in a much larger, more mature TPM team that you had helped grow around you.
Yeah.
The What does a normal day kind of look like? Or at least, pick a phase of your career. Like what did a normal kind of day look like, work day?
So I will say, and this is my personal opinion, other people have different opinions on this, but for me, every day should be different. I shouldn't have a checklist that I just go through every day because I will be bored out of my skull. And that means that things are not automated where they should be. So every day should look different. Um, for example, like the 2 week sprint cycle is a good example. Say we started on a Monday and we end it, you know, 2 Fridays later. That Monday, maybe we're doing sprint plannings and we're having retrospectives about the previous one. Like that might be a really loaded meeting day where I spend my entire day with the teams discussing the work they've done, doing retrospective on the work that they've done, planning the upcoming work. Like maybe we have to do some backlog refinement because things have changed a little bit since we initially scoped the work. Monday might be a really heavy meeting day. Tuesday, I might have absolutely no meetings because I'm just letting you all work. Or maybe Tuesday is the day I follow up with all my stakeholders. Maybe that's when I go through and give them the update on here's where all the stuff is. And maybe that's a 15-minute meeting with everybody, or maybe that's a bunch of little meetings, depending on how many different projects I have going on. And then maybe the rest of that week is really light for me, and I'm able to work with an engineering manager and product manager to plan 3 sprints ahead of what they would like to see, so that come the following Monday, maybe we have a backlog refinement meeting and we can get another sprint ahead on that. So it ends up very meeting heavy in the beginning and the end of a sprint, and everything in between is going to be variable just depending on the kind of work that's being done at that time. It's never going to be, excuse me, it's never going to be the same. So I don't like my days to always look the same. Week by week, it might be like, oh yeah, Monday's always really meeting heavy. Tuesday, I never have meetings. Wednesday is a day that, I spend a lot of time heads down or something, but every day should look different. And it should be adapting week by week so that I'm doing the work I should be doing and helping you all focus on the work you're supposed to be doing, and not just tying up your days with meetings.
See why I like working with Leslie. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the weeks like they might rhyme, but they're not copies of each other. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
just not a checklist where it's like Monday I do XYZ every single Monday for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Um,
Because
I
I
left
would
the
dread
end
it.
of that poem off because it involves like just just jumping into the ocean.
Oh.
It yeah, I think it's a really, it's funny. It's like just how I wish I'd had this conversation with you 10 years ago. It would have it would have really helped helped me understand like just the larger picture of what I was doing, because it's so easy to have
Yeah.
kind of wrong preconceptions or you know, you have one experience and you generalize from that. It's like you have one PM at your first job and it's like that's what they all must be like. um
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing too, is that when you don't know, like if you're not in meetings with me, I should be kind of invisible to you. So you don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm probably looking at the roadmap and refining documentation, and I'm going through emails and providing updates to people. I'm, rounding people up in Slack channels for that sort of stuff. I'm, just looking ahead to see what kind of stuff I can get through ahead of the next meetings. And like, it's just everything is proactive. Everything I'm doing is proactive. So it should be different all the time.
I'm going to switch into the more like philosophical now, because you just made me think of something that it's a belief that I have that maybe it's wrong, but I always feel like you as like a TPM has what seems to me like a really symbiotic relationship with an engineering manager. And I often in places where I only have an engineering manager above me, I often think, wow, they're like overwhelmed with all this stuff that a TPM would help with. And I feel like it's obviously not the norm uh, yet, but it feels like it kind of should be, because every time I have had an engineering manager paired with a TPM that actually has time to work closely with them, things go real smooth, like for years
Yeah.
at a time. Um, and yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is that like,
I I wrote a document years ago, and it's my personal documentation because I'm that kind of nerd. I have a folder for my personal
honestly,
documentation.
Leslie, I'm embarrassed for you right now. It's
I am too. But I have a document, and I wrote up the distinct differences between the roles and responsibilities for a TPM, a product manager, and an engineering manager. Because lots of places don't have that division of labor between those three roles, and like an engineering manager is doing all of them, or they have a TPM doing product management, which you do not want, by the way. Like by and large, that is not a thing that you want. Those are not the same job at all. And so I have this big document that's just 3 columns that says here's what each of these do. And so often when I'm kind of going through that exercise with a new group of people, I'm basically listing everything in the engineering manager's column and finding that there's nothing in the other two. And then I'm extracting things and being like, here's all the stuff I should be taking from you. And here's all the stuff a product manager should be taking from you. And that list gets so small because they should be focused, the engineering manager should be focused on the people and like how things are going with their general team and against that roadmap of theirs. They shouldn't be worrying about the nitty gritty details. That's what I should be doing. And they shouldn't be focused on the product development side of things. That's what the product manager should be doing. So the engineering managers tend to get completely saddled with everything that 2 other people should be taking from them. I see that a lot.
yeah, yeah, it seems like at a lot of companies there's this like just grind it out attitude at that. It's like senior management doesn't really see that as a huge problem. They're just like, ah, some of them will make it, you know, some of these little turtles will make it into the ocean and the rest will get horrifically murdered on the sand. It's like, well, they don't have to be. Like, you could
Yeah,
help them. Like, you know, it's
we have the technology.
yeah. And I wonder, it's like maybe that's just sort of the more business management track. Like, you know, there's always that instinct, no matter where you are, where it's like someone that had it hard coming up doesn't want it to be easy for the people that are coming up now, because what would all that struggle have been
Mhm.
worth? And you kind of see it everywhere, like in the
Yeah.
world. And it strikes me as almost something like that, where it's like this crucible that young engineering managers have to run, even though there is like definitely demonstrably a better way that you just described. um
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like,
I've
oh,
never
I'm
understood
burning
that
out.
either. Like, just because you walked uphill both ways in the snow going back and forth to school doesn't mean the other
Yeah,
person
you don't need
should.
to sentence the whole world to doing that. Like that's not an improvement
Mm-mm.
for a
No,
thing.
I hate reinventing the wheel. Like,
Yeah,
that's why I try to make everything repeatable. Because if I can just copy and paste a thing, then I just saved myself who knows how much time and probably saved somebody else who knows how much time. So, like, just build off of what you have.
yeah,
Like, don't reinvent the wheel.
yeah. So now we're getting really philosophical. uh I'm not going to ask you, so what do you think of the tech industry, Leslie? But how have you seen things kind of change? I mean, you've been in this industry a while. um how have you seen things change for the better, for the worse, and like where do you see things going? What are some things you would like to see? It's a buffet. Answer whatever you want.
Well, uh, I went from being one of two women in my college courses for technology to seeing that be a much larger number these days. Whole separate conversation. Women are still fighting their way in, but I was one of two, and the other one went a different direction, and then it was just me, um, surrounded by a bunch of men that already had the advantage. So now we have a greater respect for the fact that, hi, women can do this too. Literally anybody. Yeah, it's crazy, right? We all have brains and we can all use them. Um, I know. I'm saying crazy things now. This is the part where people are like, whoa.
Bagel's pissed. I mean, this is way too
Bagel.
progressive for Bagel.
I'm sorry, Bagel. So sorry.
Wow.
What was
What
he
a
losing his
jackass.
mind about?
I had to turn down the Fox News and just tell him, listen, Leslie is a working woman and you need to deal with it. Um,
Bagel's so old fashioned.
yeah.
Um, no, but so like we've gone to that from that to today, where again, still a bit of a fight, but it's much more visible that like there are very intelligent people from any gender that can do this job. Like that part is wonderful. The thing that came with that though, which I find interesting, is that engineering and tech is so much more about the people now than it ever was when I first started. Like I got into tech because I was like, oh, computers, it's not people. Great. I can deal with computers and not humans all day. And now my entire day is dealing with humans and much less so the computers. Like I'm dealing with humans through computer. And that's about it. Like it's all human now. So it's like that's not a good or a bad thing to me. It's just bizarre because I went into it for the non-human aspect and now my entire life is the human aspect because it's we've realized that the computers cannot do everything. We need humans to help the computers do things, um, which I like, but I feel like that also lends itself to this toxicity that we see sometimes in tech that I don't love. um, we're more sensitive to people's issues and people's different circumstances, and like it's been really good working remotely because people have understand like they understand the advantages to that now for people that have disabilities or have kids and like don't want to do the back and forth of the commute and all that. Like it's made a lot of things easier for a lot of people and made jobs more accessible that weren't before. So that part's great. But I feel like it's also kind of unraveled this cultural thing in tech now where everything is very sensitive, and I struggle with that because I don't have a filter, and
Yeah.
that's a hard balance to find because you want people to be heard but you don't want to spend your whole day talking about non-work
Yeah.
issues.
It's you have to, I think what you're saying is, and I know this is true for you always have good intent when you're dealing with someone. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it, is like you need to be on a team in a company where the focus is like, look, you need to have kind intent. And if your intent is kind, like we can work around whatever things come up. It's like someone gets offended or
Yeah.
you really do say something stupid and you have to apologize. It's like it takes two sides to assume that basically everyone is decent and uh,
Yeah.
wants to get along. Um, so
Yeah, as long as the
yeah,
assumption is good intent, that makes everything easier. But if
yeah,
you go into a workplace assuming everyone's attacking you, regardless of the industry, that's never going to work. That's just
yeah.
a
And it's a
terrible way to
cultural
go about
thing.
it.
It's like if you're at a company where people don't genuinely trust each other and assume, like,
Right.
there is no like safe assumption of good intent because people are politicking, people are stabbing each other in the back. Like that really does become a toxic and dangerous place to
Yeah.
work, and it's like totally
And
understandable.
I fully recognize that that's harder to gauge when you've, like, for people that are joining companies remotely and never physically meeting their coworkers now. Like, you have to put in a little more effort to learn a conversation back and forth between somebody to learn how they're functioning and what their intent is remotely and virtually versus when you're in an office when it, you might learn that within 5 minutes of standing next to each other. It's a time investment, but I feel like it's a worthy one.
Yeah, it's like it's understandable. Like our industry is still kind of going through this reckoning, and like how do we want this industry to look when we're kind of done shaping it with our generation of people that are working in it. And we still have a ways to go. Yeah. And obviously, based on wherever I just cut all the dirty jokes out, leads us neatly into, do you like baking?
I do.
Leslie, where
It's
can someone
funny
go
you
if they
should
like to bake?
ask. Uh, for a little light background, I started a website called stressbaking.com in around 2015 because I was very stressed out by the tech industry and the work that I was doing because it was at that time, that particular company was just very stressful. And the only thing I could really do to deal with it was I would go home and make like 3 dozen cookies. And I like experimenting with recipes. So I was making like new homemade recipes for myself. And basically, my dad wanted them. So I put them on the internet and he jokingly called it. He was like, "Oh, did you do any stress baking last night or this weekend or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, I totally did." So I bought the domain for it and I've built it into a business now. It's an LLC. It's a real thing. So stressbaking.com if you ever want sweet, savory, cocktails, like whatever. I kind of do a little bit of everything. But that's my hobby outside of work is
Yeah, check it out
the
if you like. But we see a lot of recipe sites, and yours is genuinely a great baking site, and it's more than baking, but like it's actually a good one. The way it's laid out, the way the recipes are, it's clear, it's good communication.
it's I try to position it as like, yeah, it's homemade recipes, but there's a sense of humor to it. I'm going to show you all the stuff that I messed up in the process so you can see like here's how it can go wrong. I make fun of myself. Like I don't take it that seriously in terms of like I'm a top chef kind of thing. I'm not. But I am self-taught and I will help you learn the same way that I did.
Leslie, thank you for taking the time to do this and kind of sharing your wisdom, your experience. I genuinely learned new stuff about my industry and working with TPMs and how things are structured, kind of above my pay grade, that are gonna come in handy.
I'm glad
And
I could share those secrets with you.
thank you. And after 10 years, you'll be glad to know I actually update my tickets now.
Ah,
Just from
I'm so
I've
proud of
actually
you.
started using it as a tool for myself, because in my current role I'm very much like a glue person, so like I'll work on 4 different
Yeah,
projects a week, just checking in with someone, helping them get on blocks going and asking how things are going here. And
right.
it's like, I mean, you know me, I'm like context switching is hard. I like to work on one thing, and actually uh using the ticketing system as a tool to help me manage what's going on. It took
It's
10 years, Leslie, but I finally followed your advice.
you're leaving yourself breadcrumbs so you can
Yeah.
find your way to the end of
Yeah.
the
So I don't
trail.
have to remember everything in 20 different things in my brain. Yeah.
It's crazy.
External systems. How about that?
Hey, they have usefulness and
Yeah.
application.
I thought it was just devil talk issuing forth from your lips 10 years ago. But I now realize you were right and I was wrong.
Cheers to you for finally listening to me a decade later.
Thanks again, Leslie. It's been great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm glad we finally did this.
Yeah, if you haven't yet, if this was helpful at all, like, subscribe, tweet me on Instagram, Facebook me, and what are some made up ones too? I'm actually not on Instagram at all, nor am I on Facebook. So these people are
Uh,
weird.
Pinterest.
Yeah, Pinterest me. I'm gonna show you my computer designs. Uh, all right. See y'all. Peace.
Hey everyone, I just want to give a big shout out to Linode for sponsoring this video. Whether you just want a temporary Linux box to mess around with and learn on, or a beefier personal server for a blog or portfolio site, or even a game or VPN server to share with your friends and family, Linode has you covered. And if you need to grow your business, Linode can scale up to reliably serve millions of visitors. Two things that really stand out for me, besides the fact that they offer Arch images. First, the number of pre-built images they offer that let you set up popular applications with a single click is pretty amazing. And second, the ability they give you to create custom images makes their platform a joy to work with. And yes, they even have a Packer builder, so you can start off strong with a real infrastructure as code workflow. Did I mention they have pre-built Arch servers? Here's the other thing. If you run into any trouble getting set up, Linode comes with amazing 24/7 customer support by phone, yeah, they have phones, or ticket, along with hundreds of tech guides and tutorials to help you get started. They've been around for a long time and their reputation is amazing for a reason. If you sign up today at linode.com/tutoriallinux, you'll get a $100 60-day credit to use on your new Linode account. So just click the link in the description below and you can be signed up in about 60 seconds.